The summer of 1998 in Limestone County, Texas, was marked by record-breaking heat. Temperatures soared past 105 degrees for 16 consecutive days, straining the electrical grid beyond capacity. Local meteorologists called it the summer that wouldn't end, while residents of the small town of Thorndale whispered about omens and bad luck. Nobody could have predicted how prophetic those whispers would become. But on the evening of August 14th, 1998, the Reeves family prepared for dinner in their ranch-style home on the outskirts of town. Thomas Reeves, 42, a respected petroleum engineer at Gulf Stream Oil, had just returned from a 2-week assignment in Corpus Christi. His wife, Victoria, 39, taught biology at Thorndale High School. Their children Eliza, 16, and Jackson, 12, had spent the summer swimming at Limestone Lake and riding bikes through the neighborhood. To neighbors and friends, the Reeves represented the quintessential American family, hard-working, church-going, and kind. The mercury hit 107 degrees that Friday. Air conditioners across Thorndale strained against the relentless heat. At 6:32 p.m., as the Reeves gathered around their dining table, the town plunged into darkness. A catastrophic failure at the Hornsby electrical substation triggered a regional blackout affecting 5 counties. Emergency services scrambled to restore power, but the damage was extensive. Limestone County would remain without electricity for the next 48 hours. It was like someone just turned off the world, recalled Eleanor Winters, who lived 3 houses down from the Reeves. One minute we are complaining about the heat, the next we are fumbling around for flashlights and candles. Nobody panicked, though. We'd been through blackouts before. As darkness fell, families across Thorndale moved to their porches seeking relief from the stifling heat inside their homes. Neighbors shared ice, batteries, and news. Children played flashlight tag in front yards, while adults monitored battery-powered radios for updates. By 10 p.m., most of Thorndale had settled into an uneasy acceptance of their powerless predicament. But at the Reeves household, something was wrong. Victoria's sister, Pamela Hudson, called the landline repeatedly that evening. When no one answered, she assumed the phone lines had been affected by the blackout. The following morning, she drove the 20 minutes from her home in Cameron to check on her sister's family. The front door was unlocked. Pamela later told investigators. The table was set for dinner. 4 plates, 4 glasses of water. But there was no food on the plates, and no sign of the family. Thomas's wallet sat on the kitchen counter next to Victoria's purse. The family's 1996 Ford Explorer remained in the driveway. A pot of water for pasta still sat on the stove, never heated. 4 pairs of shoes lined the entryway. Even Duchess, the family's golden retriever, was still in the backyard, unfed, agitated. The Reeves family had vanished without taking any personal belongings. Pamela immediately contacted the Thorndale Police Department. Officer Jeffrey Burton responded to the call, but initially showed little concern. Power's out all over the county, ma'am. They probably went to stay with friends who have a generator. Have you tried the neighbors? But as Pamela pointed out, the untouched dinner table, the abandoned vehicle, and the personal items left behind, Officer Burton's casual demeanor shifted. By noon, 4 additional officers had arrived at the Reeves home. By evening, the Texas Rangers had joined the investigation. Then, the initial search revealed no signs of forced entry or struggle. Fingerprint analysis showed only prints belonging to the family and close friends. The house was immaculate, eerily so, some officers noted. Not a cushion out of place, not a drawer left open. No blood, no broken glass, no overturned furniture. It was like they just evaporated, Ranger Dominic Alvarez wrote in his preliminary report. The 4 people don't just disappear without leaving some trace. Something happened in this house, but whatever it was, someone went to great lengths to hide it. The investigators expanded their search to the surrounding property. The Reeves owned 5 acres of land, most of it undeveloped scrub brush and mesquite trees. Cadaver dogs were brought in but found nothing. Ground-penetrating radar revealed no disturbed soil. Helicopter sweeps of the area showed no unusual activity. Meanwhile, the community mobilized. This Despite the ongoing blackout, over 200 volunteers assembled at Thorndale Baptist Church to form search parties. They combed through nearby fields, abandoned buildings, and the shores of Limestone Lake. Local businesses donated supplies, and the church parking lot transformed into a makeshift command center. Pastor William Hargrove remembered the atmosphere of those first days. There was confusion, certainly, but also determination. The Reeves were our own. Thomas coached Little League. Victoria organized the science fair every year. Those kids were bright lights in our community. Everyone wanted to help bring them home. But as hours stretched into days, hope began to wane. Power was restored on Sunday evening, but the Reeves family remained missing. The FBI arrived on Monday morning, establishing a regional task force dedicated to the case. Special Agent Lauren Phillips took charge of the investigation, bringing with her a team specializing in family abductions. This case was unusual from the start, Phillips later wrote in her memoir, Vanished. Most family disappearances involve custody disputes or domestic violence. But the Reeves had no history of either. Thomas and Victoria's financial records showed a stable, comfortable life. No unusual withdrawals or deposits, and secret accounts. No crushing debt. Thomas had recently received a promotion. Victoria was set to become department head at the high school. The children's academic and social records showed no red flags. By all accounts, this was a happy, functional family that vanished during dinner preparations. The FBI expanded the investigation beyond Thorndale. They interviewed Thomas's colleagues at Gulfstream Oil. They spoke with Victoria's fellow teachers and administrators. They questioned Eliza's friends and boyfriends. They interviewed Jackson's baseball teammates and classmates. They tracked down distant relatives, former neighbors, and casual acquaintances. A picture of the Reeves family emerged, one that only deepened the mystery. 2 weeks before the disappearance, Thomas had met with the company's legal team regarding irregularities he'd discovered in offshore drilling reports. According to his supervisor, Anthony Walsh, Thomas had expressed concerns about potential environmental violations at several Gulfstream oil platforms in the Gulf of Mexico. He wasn't threatening to blow any whistles, Walsh told investigators. Tom was a company man through and through. He just wanted to make sure everything was above board. But the legal team assured him they'd look into it. Walsh insisted that the meeting had been cordial and that no disciplinary action had been discussed. Victoria, meanwhile, had recently served as a character witness in a contentious custody case involving her colleague, Rebecca Townsend. Rebecca's ex-husband, Jonathan, had a history of domestic violence and had threatened Rebecca and her supporters. However, Jonathan had been in Dallas the weekend the Reeves disappeared, his alibi confirmed by multiple witnesses. Eliza Reeves had broken up with her boyfriend, David Phillips, 3 days before the family vanished. Friends described the split as mutual and drama-free. David had been camping with his father in Arkansas when the Reeves disappeared, a fact verified by park rangers and other campers. Jackson Reeves, the youngest family member, seemed to have no enemies or troubles. His teachers described him as intelligent and well-adjusted. His baseball coach called him the kind of kid who makes coaching worthwhile. Every potential lead faded into nothing. Every possible motive dissolved under scrutiny. The FBI interviewed over 500 people connected to the Reeves family. They executed 37 search warrants. They analyzed phone records, bank statements, computer files, and school reports. They constructed detailed timelines and relationship maps. And still, they found nothing. As the investigation continued, public interest in the case exploded. The Reeves family's disappearance became national news. Family of 4 vanishes during Texas blackout blared headlines across the country. Cable news networks sent correspondents to Thorndale. True crime enthusiasts created online forums dedicated to the case. Theories ranged from the plausible witness protection program to the absurd alien abduction. 3 weeks after the disappearance, an anonymous caller contacted the FBI tip line claiming to have seen the Reeves family at a gas station near the Mexican border. Surveillance footage from the station revealed a family with a superficial resemblance to the Reeves, but facial recognition software confirmed they were not the missing family. In October, a truck driver reported seeing Victoria and the children at a diner in Oklahoma. This sighting, too, proved false. By December, the active investigation had begun to slow. The FBI maintained a presence in Thorndale, but many agents had been reassigned to other cases. Special Agent Phillips remained dedicated to finding the Reeves family, but even she admitted that the trail had gone cold. "We have 4 people who disappeared without taking any personal items," she told reporters at a press conference marking the 4-month anniversary of the disappearance. "No bodies, no ransom demands, no evidence of criminal activity. It's as if they simply ceased to exist." Throughout 1999, periodic reports of sightings came in from across the country. The Reeves in Seattle, the Reeves in Miami, the Reeves in Chicago. Each sighting was investigated. Each proved to be a case of mistaken identity or an outright fabrication. The family's home remained untouched, preserved as a potential crime scene. Victoria's sister, Pamela, continued to pay the mortgage using funds from the family's accounts, which had been accessed only by law enforcement during the investigation. Dust gathered on the dining room table, still set for the dinner that never happened. On the 1-year anniversary of the disappearance, Thorndale held a candlelight vigil. Hundreds attended, including investigators who had worked the case. Pastor Hargrove led the community in prayer. Former students shared memories of Victoria's kindness. Little League players recalled Thomas's patient coaching. Classmates spoke of Eliza's infectious laugh and Jackson's clever jokes. "We don't know where they are," Pastor Hargrove said that evening, "but we know who they are, and we will not forget them." The case gradually receded from national attention, but remained an open wound in Thorndale. The local newspaper ran monthly updates, even when there was nothing new to report. The high school established scholarships in Eliza's and Jackson's names. Gulf Stream Oil kept Thomas's position open for 3 years before finally hiring a replacement. In 2003, 5 years after the disappearance, the Texas Department of Public Safety officially classified the Reeves family as missing and endangered. This designation kept the case active but acknowledged the diminishing likelihood of resolution. But Pamela Hudson never lost hope. She established the Reeves Family Foundation, which provided resources for families of missing persons across Texas. She appeared on true crime television shows and podcasts, keeping her sister's family in the public consciousness. She hired private investigators when official resources dwindled. "Someone knows something" became her mantra. Someone, somewhere, knows what happened to them. Meanwhile, life in Thorndale continued. New families moved into the neighborhood. Children who had been Jackson's age when the family disappeared graduated from high school, then college. Gulf Stream Oil was acquired by a larger energy company. The high school where Victoria taught underwent renovations and expansion. Only the Reeves house remained frozen in time, a monument to the mystery that had never been solved. In 2008, on the 10th anniversary of the disappearance, the FBI officially moved the case to their cold case division. Special Agent Phillips, now assigned to the Bureau's Chicago office, traveled to Thorndale for the annual vigil. She met with Pamela Hudson and reviewed the case files one more time, hoping that a decade of investigative advances might reveal something overlooked. "I have worked hundreds of cases in my career," Phillips told Pamela, "but the Reeves family has never left me. There's an answer out there somewhere. I still believe that." The following years brought technological advancements in forensic science. The FBI periodically re-examined evidence from the Reeves home using new techniques. They ran DNA samples through expanded databases. They applied advanced algorithms to analyze phone records and financial transactions. They used social media monitoring tools to scan for any mention of the family. Still, nothing surfaced. By 2013, even Pamela Hudson had begun to accept that she might never learn what happened to her sister's family. The annual vigils continued but attracted fewer participants each year. The Reeves Family Foundation shifted its focus to supporting legislation improving missing persons protocols. The house, now in disrepair, became a local landmark of sorts, the place where the family disappeared during the blackout of '98. Then, in February 2014, nearly 16 years after the disappearance, a discovery in the neighboring county of Falls shattered the case wide open. Highway construction crews were expanding Route 77 between Marlin and Rosebud when excavation equipment uncovered human remains in a remote area approximately 40 miles from Thorndale. Work halted immediately, and forensic anthropologists from Baylor University were called to the scene. Initial examination suggested multiple bodies buried in a common grave. The advanced state of decomposition indicated the remains had been there for many years. Among the personal effects recovered was a high school class ring bearing the Thorndale High School insignia and the initials ER. Liza Reeves, naives. News of the discoveries spread through Thorndale like wildfire. Pamela Hudson rushed to the site but was kept at a distance while recovery operations continued. Special Agent Phillips, now the Assistant Director of the FBI's Criminal Investigative Division, flew in from Washington, D.C. to oversee the investigation personally. Over the next week, forensic teams meticulously excavated the site. They recovered 4 sets of human remains, 2 adults and 2 minors. Dental records confirmed what many had already suspected: the Reeves family had been found. But the manner of their deaths raised disturbing new questions. Forensic analysis revealed that all 4 family members had died from gunshot wounds to the head. The bullets recovered from the remains were determined to have been fired from the same weapon, a .38 caliber revolver. More disturbingly, the position of the bodies and the forensic evidence suggested an execution-style killing. This wasn't a random act of violence, Special Agent Phillips stated at a press conference following the identification of the remains. The precision of the gunshot wounds, the careful burial of the bodies, and the complete absence of evidence at the family home all point to a planned, professional operation. The discovery transformed the Reeves case from a mysterious disappearance to a quadruple homicide. The FBI established a new task force dedicated to identifying the killer or killers. They reopened every aspect of the original investigation, re-interviewing surviving witnesses and examining old evidence in light of the new findings. Attention quickly focused on Thomas Reeves's work at Gulfstream Oil. The environmental concerns he had raised shortly before the family's disappearance now took on ominous significance. FBI agents obtained court orders to access sealed corporate records from 1998. They interviewed former executives, many of whom had moved on to other companies in the intervening years. The investigation revealed that in the months before the family's disappearance, Gulfstream Oil had been preparing for a major public offering. Thomas Reeves had discovered evidence suggesting that safety violations at several offshore platforms had been deliberately concealed from federal regulators. According to internal memos recovered by the FBI, these violations, if exposed, could have resulted in massive fines and potentially derailed the public offering, costing executives millions in stock options. Anthony Walsh, Thomas's former supervisor, was brought in for questioning. Now retired and living in Florida, Walsh initially maintained that Thomas's concerns had been addressed appropriately through legal channels. But when confronted with newly discovered documents contradicting his story, Walsh's account began to change. There was pressure from above to handle the situation discreetly, he admitted during his 3rd interview. The company was weeks away from going public. Billions were at stake. Thomas wasn't threatening to go to the authorities, but he was insistent that the violations be disclosed and addressed. Some people in upper management saw him as a liability. Walsh denied any knowledge of what happened to the Reeves family but provided investigators with names of executives who had been particularly concerned about Thomas's discovery. Several of these individuals had since died or were suffering from age-related cognitive decline. Others maintained their innocence and hired high-powered attorneys. As the FBI followed the corporate thread, another aspect of the case resurfaced. Rebecca Townsend, Victoria's colleague who had been involved in the contentious custody battle, revealed information she had withheld during the original investigation. "I was afraid," she told investigators in 2014. "After the Reeves disappeared, I received a phone call. The caller didn't identify himself, but he said, "Their problems are over. Yours could be just beginning." I assumed it was my ex-husband trying to scare me, but looking back, I'm not so sure. Jonathan Townsend, Rebecca's ex-husband, had died in a car accident in 2006. His potential connection to the case could no longer be directly investigated, but the FBI examined his financial records from 1998 and discovered several large cash deposits in the weeks following the Reeves family's disappearance. The investigation now pursued two separate but potentially connected theories: corporate silencing or murder for hire linked to the custody case. Both avenues suggested professional killers rather than crimes of passion, which aligned with the forensic evidence at the burial site. Meanwhile, the recovery of the Reeves family's remains allowed Pamela Hudson to finally lay her sister and her family to rest. A funeral service was held at Thorndale Baptist Church, the same place where search parties had organized 16 years earlier. The entire town attended, along with investigators who had worked the case over the years. "This isn't the resolution we prayed for," Pastor Hargrove said during the service, his voice breaking with emotion. "But it is an end to the uncertainty, an opportunity for proper remembrance, and the beginning of a journey toward justice." As 2014 progressed, the FBI investigation gained momentum. Agents discovered that one of Gulf Stream Oil's security consultants during the late 1990s had been Sentinel Private Solutions, a now defunct company with alleged ties to former intelligence operatives. Financial records showed unusual payments from Gulfstream to Sentinel in August 1998, the month the Reeves family disappeared. The CEO of Gulfstream during that period, Harold Wainwright, was located living under an assumed name in Belize. Extradition proceedings began, but before they could be completed, Wainwright was found dead in his villa, an apparent suicide. He left behind a letter addressed to his children, portions of which were later leaked to the press. "The decisions we make in moments of fear and ambition can haunt us forever. I have carried this burden for too long. I never wanted anyone to die. I only wanted the problem solved. They assured me no one would get hurt. But I believed them because I needed to. May God forgive me. I know the Reeves never will." The letter stopped short of a full confession but provided investigators with their strongest evidence yet of corporate involvement in the family's murder. Still, questions remained. Who actually pulled the trigger? Who else knew about the plan? How had 4 people been removed from their home during a blackout without anyone noticing? Special Agent Phillips, approaching retirement, remained determined to find answers. "The Reeves family has waited 16 years for justice," she told her team. "I don't intend to make them wait any longer." As the summer of 2014 arrived, bringing with it the 16th anniversary of the disappearance, the investigators prepared to unveil their findings and announce charges against multiple individuals connected to Gulf Stream Oil and Sentinel Private Solutions. And the case that had begun during a summer blackout was about to come to light. But then came another discovery, one that would challenge everything investigators thought they knew about the fate of the Reeves family. On the morning of July 30th, 2014, FBI agents executed simultaneous search warrants at 7 locations across 3 states. Their targets included the former headquarters of Sentinel Private Solutions in Virginia, the vacation homes of 2 retired Gulf Stream Oil executives, and the rural Tennessee property of former Sentinel operative Gabriel Harding. Harding, 58, had been identified through financial records and witness testimony as the Sentinel employee who had liaised with Gulf Stream Oil in the summer of 1998. Now operating a private security firm training military contractors, Harding had maintained a low profile since leaving Sentinel in 2003. When agents arrived at his 40-acre compound, they found sophisticated security systems and evidence of recent activity, but Harding himself was nowhere to be found. "He knew we were coming," Special Agent Phillips later remarked. "Someone tipped him off." The search of Harding's property yielded a hidden gun safe containing 23 weapons, including a .38 caliber Smith & Wesson revolver. The ballistics testing confirmed what investigators had suspected. The bullets recovered from the Reeves family remains matched this weapon. The murder weapon had been found. but its owner had vanished. Meanwhile, the searchers at the former executive's homes produced documents that had escaped the FBI's earlier investigations. They were hidden in a wall safe behind a painting in the Florida mansion of retired Gulf Stream Oil CFO Lawrence Donovan. Agents discovered a file labeled Thorndale Contingency. Inside were handwritten notes detailing payments to Sentinel, phone numbers with no names attached, and a cryptic notation, "TAR situation handled per HW Directive 8/1498. Complete containment." When confronted with this evidence, Donovan suffered a massive heart attack. He died 3 days later without regaining consciousness. The corporate conspiracy theory was solidifying, but important pieces remained missing. Those who had actually carried out the killings. How had they removed 4 people from their home during a blackout without leaving evidence? And most crucially, why had they taken the entire family rather than just Thomas Reeves, whose whistleblowing threatened the company? In early August, a breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Eleanor Winters, the Reeves' former neighbor who had been interviewed multiple times over the years, contacted the FBI with new information. Now in her late 70s and battling terminal cancer, Winters claimed she had withheld critical details about the night of the disappearance. "I was afraid," she told investigators from her hospital bed. "All these years, I have been afraid. But I can't take this to my grave." According to Winters, she had been sitting on her porch during the blackout when she noticed unusual activity at the Reeves house. Despite the darkness, she observed what appeared to be 3 men wearing some type of night vision equipment entering the property from the rear. Approximately 20 minutes later, she saw the men leave with 4 figures, 2 adults and 2 children walking between them. They weren't struggling, Winters recalled. They were just walking, calm as can be. "I thought maybe they were friends helping the family evacuate because of the blackout." It wasn't until the next day, when Pamela came looking for them, that I realized something was wrong. When asked why she hadn't shared this information during the original investigation, Winters became visibly distressed. The morning after, before Pamela even arrived, a man came to my door. He showed me a badge, said he was with the state police. He told me they were moving the Reeves family to safety because Thomas had uncovered a terrorist plot through his work. Said it was a matter of national security and that I'd be putting them in danger if I mentioned seeing anything. Now, the man had taken Winters' statement but never filed it with any law enforcement agency. He had also left her with a phone number to call if anyone questioned her about the family. When she called the number years later, it had been disconnected. Winters' revelations suggested a level of sophistication far beyond typical criminal activity. The operation had involved advanced planning, specialized equipment, and immediate containment of potential witnesses. Most disturbingly, it suggested that the Reeves family had left their home alive and apparently uncoerced. The FBI analysts developed a new theory. The family had been approached by individuals posing as law enforcement, who used the blackout as cover to remove them from their home under false pretenses. The family likely believed they were being taken to safety, explaining the lack of struggle and the undisturbed state of the house. This theory aligned with Gabriel Harding's background. Before joining Sentinel, he had served in U.S. Army intelligence. His military record, partially redacted for security reasons, indicated extensive training in extraction operations and interrogation techniques, and former colleagues described him as methodical, detail-oriented, and capable of gaining trust quickly. A nationwide manhunt for Harding began, but the former operative proved elusive. The FBI added him to their most wanted list, circulating his photo to law enforcement agencies across the country and internationally through Interpol. As the search for Harding continued, investigators revisited the burial site where the Reeves family had been found. The forensic team had initially focused on recovering and identifying the remains, but now they returned to conduct a more thorough examination of the surrounding area. Approximately 200 yards from the grave, in a small clearing hidden by dense underbrush, they discovered the foundations of what appeared to have been a temporary structure, possibly a cabin or shed that had been deliberately dismantled. Metal detector sweeps of the area uncovered shell casings matching the .38 caliber bullets from the murder weapon, as well as evidence of a fire pit, where documents appeared to have been burned. They weren't just killed and buried, Special Agent Phillips concluded. They were held somewhere first, possibly questioned. This finding raised new questions about the timeline of events. If the family had been taken alive and held at this location, when had they been killed? And what information had their captors been seeking? Revisiting the autopsy reports, forensic pathologists estimated that the Reeves family had died approximately 72 to 96 hours after their last meal, suggesting they had been held alive for 3 to 4 days after their abduction. Stomach contents indicated they had been fed during their captivity, though spartanly. Soft tissue damage to the wrists and ankles suggested they had been restrained. Most disturbing was the evidence that the children had been killed first, in the presence of their parents. Soil analysis and body positioning indicated that Thomas and Victoria had been forced to kneel beside the already deceased bodies of their children before being executed themselves. This wasn't just an elimination of witnesses, noted FBI criminal psychologist Dr. Abigail Ramirez. This was punishment. A message. The killers wanted Thomas Reeves to suffer before he died. But the investigation now focused on what information the killers might have been trying to extract during those 3 to 4 days. What had Thomas Reeves known that was worth not only his life but the lives of his entire family? Gulf Stream Oil's records from 1998 had been heavily redacted before being turned over to investigators during the original disappearance case. Now, armed with court orders and evidence of criminal conspiracy, the FBI gained access to the company's complete archives. Deep in the technical documentation of Platform 227B, one of Gulfstream's largest Gulf of Mexico operations, and analysts discovered what Thomas Reeves had found in the summer of 1998, evidence that the platform's structural integrity had been compromised during a hurricane the previous year. Rather than performing the necessary repairs which would have cost millions and shut down production for months, executives had falsified inspection reports and continued operations. More damning still, internal communications revealed awareness that the platform was at high risk of catastrophic failure. An engineering assessment commissioned by the company, but never filed with regulators, had warned that under certain storm conditions, the platform could collapse, resulting in both loss of life and an environmental disaster potentially worse than the 1989 Exxon Valdez spill. These revelations shed new light on the company's desperate actions. It wasn't just the impending public offering at stake, it was potential criminal liability for knowingly endangering workers and the environment. If Thomas Reeves had taken his concerns public, executives could have faced prison sentences. But while this explained the motive for silencing Thomas, it didn't explain why the entire family had been eliminated. The corporate conspiracy angle, though compelling, still had holes. In September 2014, 7 months after the discovery of the Reeves family's remains, a crucial lead emerged. Gabriel Harding was spotted at a border crossing in Washington state, apparently attempting to enter Canada using falsified identification. He was apprehended by U.S. Border Patrol agents and transferred to FBI custody. Upon interrogation, Harding initially maintained his innocence, claiming he had no knowledge of the Reeves family or any operations involving Gulf Stream Oil. When presented with the evidence, the murder weapon found in his possession, financial records showing payments from Sentinel to his offshore accounts, and witness testimony placing someone matching his description in Thorndale around the time of the disappearance, Harding's demeanor changed. "You have got parts of it right," he finally told investigators. "But you are missing the bigger picture." According to Harding, the operation to silence Thomas Reeves had indeed been commissioned by Gulf Stream Oil executives, but not solely because of the platform's safety issues. Thomas had stumbled onto something far more damaging during his review of offshore operations. Platform 227B wasn't just an oil rig, Harding explained. It was a listening post. Harding claimed that certain Gulf Stream Oil platforms, including 227B, had been equipped with sophisticated underwater surveillance systems designed to monitor Russian submarine activity in the Gulf of Mexico. This program, codenamed Neptune's Ear, Allies, Tips, had allegedly been a joint venture between the company and a faction within U.S. intelligence services operating without proper congressional oversight. Thomas Reeves wasn't just a whistleblower about environmental risks, Harding stated. He had evidence of illegal domestic surveillance, corporate espionage, and misappropriation of classified technology, and that made him a national security threat in some very powerful people's eyes. Harding's claims were explosive and, at first glance, seemed like the desperate fabrications of a man facing multiple murder charges. But when investigators followed up on his statements, they discovered disturbing corroboration. And declassified naval intelligence documents from the late 1990s referenced a program similar to what Harding described, though the specifics and the involvement of private corporations had been redacted. Former intelligence officials, speaking on condition of anonymity, this confirmed that operations using private infrastructure as cover for surveillance activities had been common during this period. More convincingly, Thomas Reeves's personal effects, preserved by his sister-in-law after the disappearance, included a key to a safety deposit box at First National Bank of Thorndale. The box, which had never been located during the original investigation, was finally opened in October 2014. Inside were microfilm copies of technical schematics labeled 227B subsurface modifications showing equipment that had nothing to do with oil extraction, along with photographs of what appeared to be non-standard electronic components being installed during platform maintenance. A handwritten note from Thomas stated, "Not on any approved engineering plans. Not in any budget. Who authorized this and what is it for?" Harding's account began to align with the evidence, but he continued to deny personal involvement in the killings. He claimed his role had been limited to planning the extraction and that others operatives whose names he didn't know had carried out the actual abduction. He insisted he had left the operation after the family was secured at the remote location and had no knowledge of their execution. "My job was to get them out clean and set up the interrogation site," he maintained. "I was told they would be questioned and then relocated witness protection style. The killing wasn't part of my brief." Forensic evidence, however, told a different story. DNA matching Harding's was found on cigarette butts recovered from the fire pit near the temporary structure. Shell casings at the scene bore his fingerprints. And most damningly, soil samples taken from boots found in his Tennessee home matched the distinct mineral composition of the burial site. Confronted with this evidence, Harding finally broke. His confession, recorded over 2 days of interviews, revealed the full horror of what had happened to the Reeves family. The operation had begun when Gulfstream executives, alarmed by Thomas's discoveries, contacted their security consultants at Sentinel. Harding and a team of 3 other operatives had been dispatched to assess the situation. After surveilling the family for several days, they determined that Thomas had already secured evidence off-site, and that simply eliminating him would not contain the breach. The team decided to use the family as leverage. When weather forecasts predicted potential grid failures due to the heat wave, they saw their opportunity. Using specialized equipment, they triggered a localized surge at the electrical substation serving Thorndale, ensuring a blackout that would cover their activities. During the power outage, Harding and his team approached the Reeves home wearing law enforcement uniforms and night vision goggles. They informed the family that credible threats had been made against them due to Thomas's work and that they needed to evacuate immediately for their safety. The darkness and confusion of the blackout, combined with the authority of the false police presence, prevented the family from questioning the story. The Reeves were taken to the remote location in Falls County, where they were separated and interrogated. Thomas initially maintained that his concerns were purely about platform safety, but when the operatives threatened his children, he revealed the existence of the safety deposit box and other evidence he had gathered about Project Neptune's Ear. What followed was a methodical operation to recover all evidence Thomas had hidden. One team member remained with the family while Harding and the others used the information extracted from Thomas to locate and secure his documentation. They accessed his office at Gulfstream, his computer files, and the safety deposit box. "We got everything," Harding admitted. "Or at least we thought we did." But as they prepared to conclude the operation, they received new orders from their Gulf Stream contact, complete elimination of all witnesses. The blackout and subsequent investigation had attracted more attention than anticipated. The family had seen the operatives' faces. The risk was deemed too great, and Harding claimed he had objected to the change in plans but was overruled. Fearing for his own safety if he refused, he participated in the execution of the family, killing them in the specific order and manner revealed by the forensic evidence. "I have done things in service to my country that would keep most people awake at night," Harding told investigators. "But this wasn't for country. This was for money and to cover up corporate crimes. It's haunted me every day since." Harding provided names, dates, and details that allowed investigators to identify the other members of his team. 2 had died in the intervening years, one in a military contractor operation in Iraq, another of apparent suicide. The third, Martin Reese, was located living under an assumed identity in rural Montana. When FBI agents moved to arrest Reese, he engaged in a firefight that left 2 agents wounded before taking his own life. A search of his property uncovered additional evidence linking him to the Reeves case, including photographs of the family taken during surveillance before the abduction. Harding's testimony and the recovered evidence allowed prosecutors to build cases against surviving Gulf Stream executives who had ordered the operation. 5 former corporate officers were indicted on charges ranging from conspiracy to commit murder to obstruction of justice. The 2 accepted plea deals in exchange for testimony against their colleagues. The most senior executives, however, would never face justice. Harold Wainwright had already taken his life in Belize. Lawrence Donovan had died of a heart attack during the investigation. And the former CEO, William Preston, suffered a fatal stroke the day before his scheduled grand jury appearance. The alleged intelligence community connections that Harding had described proved more difficult to verify or prosecute. While evidence supported the existence of Project Neptune's ear, that the specific individuals who had authorized or overseen the program remained shielded by national security classifications and bureaucratic barriers. A congressional inquiry was initiated, but much of its proceedings were conducted behind closed doors. The final report, heavily redacted before public release, acknowledged improper collaboration between private industry and elements within the intelligence community, but assigned no individual culpability. For the town of Thorndale and for Pamela Hudson, the resolution of the case brought a complex mixture of closure and renewed grief. The community held a memorial service at Thorndale Baptist Church, where Pastor Hargrove, now in his 70s, offered words of both solace and outrage. "We now know that the Reeves family was betrayed by the very institutions that should have protected them," he told the congregation. Thomas stood for truth and integrity, and for that he and his beloved family paid the ultimate price. We cannot bring them back, but we can honor their memory by demanding accountability and refusing to look away from injustice, no matter how powerful those behind it may be. Pamela Hudson, addressing the gathered mourners, spoke of her 16-year quest for answers. "I always believed we would learn the truth someday," she said. "I never imagined it would be so much worse than anything I had feared. My sister and her family deserved so much better than this. They deserved to live their lives, to grow old together, to see their children flourish. And that was stolen from them, not just by the men who pulled the trigger, but by everyone who valued profit and power over human lives." In November 2014, Gabriel Harding pleaded guilty to 4 counts of first-degree murder. In exchange for his cooperation, prosecutors did not seek the death penalty. He was sentenced to 4 consecutive life terms without possibility of parole. Before being led from the courtroom, Harding addressed Pamela Hudson directly. "Nothing I can say will undo what I did or ease your pain," he said. "I don't ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that your sister died trying to protect her children. Your brother-in-law died trying to expose the truth. They showed more courage in their final moments than I have shown in my entire life." And the trials of the Gulf Stream executives continued through 2015, resulting in convictions for 3 former officers. The corporate entity itself, now operating under different ownership, reached a settlement with the Reeves estate, establishing a foundation dedicated to corporate accountability and whistleblower protection. Platform 227B, the offshore rig at the center of the conspiracy, was decommissioned in 2002 not because of safety concerns or public exposure of Project Neptune's ear, but due to declining production. It was dismantled and removed from the Gulf of Mexico, taking with it physical evidence that might have further corroborated Thomas Reeves's discoveries. Special Agent Lauren Phillips retired from the FBI in December 2015, having seen the case through to its conclusion. In her final press conference, she reflected on the investigation that had spanned her entire career. "The Reeves case represents both the worst and the best of what I have seen in law enforcement," she said. "The worst in terms of the crime itself, the calculated elimination of an entire family to protect corporate interests and government secrets. But also the best in terms of the dedication of countless agents, officers, and civilians who never gave up on finding the truth." Phillips published her memoir, Vanished, the following year. The book detailed her decades-long pursuit of justice for the Reeves family and became a bestseller, bringing renewed national attention to the case. A documentary film based on the investigation premiered at the Sundance Film Festival in 2017, winning critical acclaim and several awards. The Reeves family home, which had remained empty for 16 years, was finally sold in 2016. The new owners, aware of its history, donated the proceeds from the sale to the Reeves Family Foundation. The dining room table where the family had gathered for their final meal was given to the Thorndale Historical Society, a somber artifact of the town's darkest chapter. Eleanor Winters, whose deathbed testimony had helped break the case open, passed away in early 2015. At her funeral, investigators who had worked the case served as honorary pallbearers, acknowledging the courage she had shown in finally revealing what she had witnessed that August night in 1998. In 2018, 20 years after the disappearance, a memorial was dedicated in Thorndale's Central Park. 4 granite benches, arranged in a circle around a simple fountain, bear the names of Thomas, Victoria, Eliza, and Jackson Reeves. A plaque recounts not only their tragic fate but also the impact of their case on corporate accountability legislation passed in its wake. The Reeves family reminds us that the pursuit of truth carries risks. The plaque reads, "But that without such pursuit, justice cannot exist." The case continues to resonate in American culture and law. Law schools use it as a case study in corporate criminal liability. Ethics courses at business schools examine the failures of leadership and moral responsibility that led to the tragedy. The intelligence oversight committees cite it as an example of the dangers of unaccountable covert operations. For most Americans, the story of the Reeves family has become a cautionary tale about corporate power, government secrecy, and the vulnerability of whistleblowers. Books, films, and television series inspired by the case have mythologized the family and their fate. But for those who knew them, their neighbors in Thorndale, Victoria's colleagues at the high school, Thomas's fellow engineers, the children's friends and classmates, the Reeves remain not symbols but people. Real, flawed, loving people whose lives were cut short because one man chose to stand for truth. In the final pages of her memoir, Special Agent Phillips described visiting the Reeves family grave on the anniversary of their disappearance. She had brought 4 white roses, one for each family member. "Standing there, I thought about what Thomas Reeves had discovered and what it had cost him," she wrote. "I thought about Victoria, who had supported her husband's decision to report what he had found. I thought about Eliza and Jackson, whose only crime was being born to parents of integrity. And the Reeves could have looked away. Thomas could have ignored the safety violations and the unauthorized equipment. He could have prioritized his career and his family's safety over what was right. Many would have, but he chose differently. And that choice set in motion events that would ultimately claim 4 innocent lives. As I laid the roses on their grave, I found myself wondering, in his position, knowing what would happen, would he have made the same choice? Would any of us? And what does it say about our society that such a question even needs to be asked? The answers to those questions remain elusive. The full truth about Project Neptune's ear may never be known, protected as it is by layers of classification and the deaths of key figures in the conspiracy. The precise calculations that led corporate executives to value their company's stock price over human lives can only be speculated upon. What is known with certainty is this: on August 14, 1998, as darkness fell over Thorndale, Texas, the Reeves family sat down to dinner. Thomas had just returned from 2 weeks away. Victoria had prepared his favorite meal. Eliza was excited about starting her junior year of high school. Jackson was eager to show his father the baseball trophy he had won during the summer league. They were a family ordinary in most ways, extraordinary in their fate. They disappeared during a blackout and were found 16 years later, having paid the ultimate price for one man's commitment to truth. Their story stands as a reminder that in the shadowy intersection of corporate power and government secrecy, that the most vulnerable targets are often those who simply wish to do what's right, and that sometimes the most dangerous decision a person can make is to refuse to look away from wrongdoing. In Thorndale, on August 14th each year, the town still observes a moment of silence at 6:32 p.m., the exact time the lights went out in 1998. For 60 seconds, businesses dim their lights, conversations pause, and traffic comes to a standstill. In that brief darkness, the community remembers the Reeves family and the night they vanished, never suspecting that their ordinary evening would become the beginning of an extraordinary and tragic chapter in American criminal history. A chapter that began with a family sitting down to dinner and ended with the exposure of a conspiracy that reached from corporate boardrooms to the hidden corridors of government power. A chapter that reminds us that the most dangerous threats to justice often hide behind badges, boardroom doors, and national security classifications. A chapter that, even now, may not be fully closed.